The celebrated Nuremberg artist Albrecht Dürer, 1471–1528, spent part of his journeyman years, from 1492 to 1494, in Basel, working as a woodcut designer for some of the most eminent publishers of his time, including Johann Bergmann von Olper, Johannes Ammerbach, and Nicholas Kessler. Basel, along with Strasbourg, Augsburg, and Nuremberg, was a prosperous commercial town and a leading artistic and publishing center in the north of the Alps. Dürer's journeyman experience here was crucial in his formation as a woodcut designer deeply engaged in the early publishing industry. The most important woodcut project that he was involved with during this time was the design of an extensive illustration cycle to accompany the satirical verses composed in German by Sebastian Brandt, 1457–1521, and published by Bergmann von Olper in 1494. This collection of moralizing stories was an instant bestseller, so much so that in that same year, 5 separate pirated editions appeared in Strasbourg, Augsburg, Nuremberg, and Reutlingen. No doubt, its numerous whimsical woodcuts depicting various types of foolish and sinful human behavior contributed to its great success, as these illustrations were copied in all subsequent editions until the late 16th century. Nowadays, in general, about 2/3 of the 114 illustrations, counting 9 repeating ones, in the 1494 edition are attributed to the young Dürer, while the rest, which are found inferior in design and cutting, are ascribed to anonymous masters, such as the so-called Master of the Heinznah, named after the namesake scene in The Ship of Fools. A more conservative view, expressed by the art historian Erwin Panofsky in 1945, attributes only 1/3 of the illustrations to Dürer. Overall, the woodcuts Dürer made during his journeyman years are not as impressive as those he created later as an independent master in Nuremberg. For example, hatching lines used for modeling consist here only of simple parallel lines, and the contour lines during this early period are depicted crudely and overly thick without much variation. The artist presumably simplified his illustrations so as to accommodate the limited skills of block cutters, Formschneider, who were in charge of cutting the woodblocks he designed. Nevertheless, Dürer's woodcuts already reveal seeds of his stylistic elements and motifs found later in his career. They also betray a greater understanding of the book's narrative and allegorical content, suggesting that he worked closely with Brandt, possibly responding directly to the author's demands and instructions. Dürer's intimate knowledge of Brandt's text can best be illustrated by examining the original title page designed by the Nuremberg artist, The Fools on a Cart and a Boatload of Fools. This woodcut of Dürer's occupies almost the entire title page and consists of 2 scenes that are vertically arranged. The upper compartment shows figures in fools' caps, shaped like donkeys' ears and adorned with bells, riding a cart pulled by horses and being guided by fools. This uppermost register also has the book's title, The Ship of Fools, Das Narrenschiff, carved on the same woodblock as the image. In the lower section, 3 boats of yelling and singing rowdy fools set out for their destination, the land of fools, ad Narragonium, as indicated in the caption. Attentive viewers may find it odd that 2 different allegorical subjects, both the multiple ships of fools and a single cart of fools, are juxtaposed in this original title cut of 1494. It differs greatly from the better-known title cuts of later years, all of which utilize the image of only a large ship of fools, thus visualizing the book's title verbatim. This seemingly dissonant title cut of 1494, however, confirms that Dürer was indeed well aware of the structure and themes of Brandt's original German text at the time of its conception and original publication. Despite the book's title, in Brandt's original text, the idea of a ship is not central, but rather incidental. As noteworthy as the ship is, it is only one amongst a number of diverse motifs including a cart, a dance, a wheel of fortune, a net, a mirror, and a bagpipe. The ship motif became the book's foremost leitmotif only when, while being translated into Latin, Jacob Locker, Brandt's pupil, extensively rearranged and revised Brandt's text to give it a semblance of unity, which was found lacking in Brandt's original. This Latin edition, translated and edited by Locker and first published by Bergmann von Olper in 1497, became the standard version of the Ship of Fools text that was repeatedly copied in all following editions and translations. Given all, at the time of the book's first publication, Dürer's title cut, with both the cart and multiple ships, advertised the book's full content more adequately than its short, unilateral title. It complements the title words in communicating the book's complex, multi-structural narrative elements to the reading public, and further, it mirrors the general structure of the book. The Ship of Fools, which consists of 112 chapters, is roughly dividable into two parts. In contrast to the first half of the book, that is, the first 61 chapters, where the metaphor of a ship plays a small role except in chapter 48, A Journeyman's Ship, the ship motif is disproportionately greater in the second half, the prologue, since it was written last, and chapters 103, of the Antichrist, 91, of Prattling in Church, 108, the Schlurafen Ship, and 109, Contempt of Misfortune. We gather that Brandt gradually realized its symbolic importance in the process of his writing. The significance of the ship in the second part is even more apparent when one examines the text illustrations. Even when the ship is only briefly mentioned, or even not mentioned at all, it is still visually depicted, sometimes as a tiny object floating on a lake, or a sea, in the background, and sometimes far more conspicuously. This can be seen in chapters 68, Not Taking a Joke, 72, of Coarse Fools, 75, of Bad Marksmen, 80, Foolish News, and 81, of Cooks and Waiters. The motif of a cart of fools is treated as a principal theme only twice in the book, once in chapter 47, On the Road of Salvation, and another time in chapter 91, of Prattling in Church, where both the cart and the ship are addressed simultaneously. Less emphatically, the cart motif is mentioned once again in chapter 53, of Envy and Hatred. However, Dürer's depiction of the cart, along with ships, on the title page serve well as metaphors for land and sea-going vehicles carrying the fools, thus conveying the universality of all the fools described by the text. With the editorial changes made to Brandt's text by Locker, who utilized the Ship of Fools as the leitmotif throughout, not only in the first Latin edition of 1497, but also in all subsequent publications, both authorized and pirated. The book no longer reproduced or imitated the original title page designed by Dürer. Instead, after 1497, a different woodcut, rendering only a large ship laden with fools and attributed to the master of the Heinz Narr, repeatedly served as the title cut prototype. In 1494, the master of the Heinz Narr's woodcut originally appeared as the frontispiece on the verso of the title page, and also can be found as an illustration accompanying chapter 108, the Schlurafen Ship. As the concept of the ship became the most significant motif of the book, this woodcut became the most fitting image for the title cut, as it visualizes the two principal ideas of the book and its title, namely, both the ship and fools. However, it is Dürer's original title cut for the 1494 edition which represents the book's original structure and thematic concerns much more faithfully and allegorically. Throughout his career as a successful independent master in Nuremberg, Dürer continued to create woodcuts that were meant to accompany texts. He provided numerous humanist friends and Nuremberg publishers with woodcuts to illustrate their new publications. Best-known works, of course, are his own illustrated books, such as the 1498, the second edition in 1511, the 1511, the 1511, and the 1511. Here, the primary features are the woodcuts themselves, rather than texts, and significantly, he self-published them by hiring printers. Dürer's later productions of such high caliber, innovation, and audacity cannot be fully understood without taking into consideration his invaluable journeyman experience in the large publishing companies and his participation in executing extensive illustration cycles such as in Basel,